They thought he was just another poor street musician until four notes revealed he was one of the greatest pianists alive. Before we dive into today's story, make sure you hit that like button, comment your thoughts, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe to Wealth and Wounds, where real struggles, deep truths, and stories of resilience come alive. They thought he was just another nobody, just another face on the corner, just another black man with a beat-up instrument, making noise no one wanted to hear. But when one arrogant officer decided to humiliate him in front of the crowd, the truth came out, and that truth shocked everyone. Because the man they mocked was no ordinary street musician. He was a world-renowned pianist who had played on the biggest stages across the globe. And when the world learned who he really was, justice struck back harder than anyone could have imagined. The summer heat pressed down on the bustling downtown. Street vendors shouted over each other. Children laughed as they ran through the plaza. And at the far corner, beneath the shadow of a broken street lamp, sat Kwame. Kwame was known in the community as the street musician. Every day, rain or shine, he sat with his old upright piano that was missing two keys. The piano was scarred and faded, but when Kwame's fingers danced across it, magic filled the air. People would stop, listen, and sometimes toss coins into the tin cup resting on top. But to many passers-by, Kwame was just another struggling black man on the streets. A nobody. What they didn't know was that Kwame had once filled concert halls in Paris, London, and New York. That piano in front of him had shared stages with orchestras and presidents. But life had broken him down. Betrayals, a stolen fortune, an industry that chewed him up and spat him out. And so, he played in the streets not for fame, but to survive. On this day, a police cruiser pulled up to the curb. Out stepped Officer Bradley, a man notorious in the neighborhood for his arrogance and cruelty. "Hey, you!" he barked, marching toward Kwame. "What's this? Panhandling again? Don't you people ever get tired of being a nuisance?" Kwame kept playing, soft notes rippling into the air. He didn't even look up. The crowd shifted nervously. They knew Bradley loved a spectacle. Bradley stepped closer, his voice rising. "I said stop playing. You need a permit for this trash. Show me your papers, or pack it up." Kwame paused. Slowly, he lifted his eyes, his deep voice calm but steady. "Music is not trash, officer. It is life." The crowd gasped. Bradley sneered. "Don't get smart with me, old man. You think just because you can plunk a few keys, you're special? This isn't your jungle. This is my street." He kicked the tin cup, sending coins scattering across the pavement. Children gasped. A woman cried out. But Kwame? He just stared, silent. His fingers hovered over the keys. "Get up," Bradley ordered. "You're done here." Kwame shook his head slowly. "I will not stop. Not until my song is finished." Bradley's face turned red. He grabbed Kwame by the collar and yanked him from the bench. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "See this, everyone," Bradley shouted. "Another bum, thinking he's better than the law. You people never learn." He shoved Kwame against the piano, nearly toppling it over. Coins rolled into the gutter. The crowd murmured angrily but stayed back. They knew the cost of challenging Bradley. Kwame, still calm, whispered, "You have no idea who I am." Bradley laughed. "Yeah? You're nobody. A broken-down beggar with a broken-down piano." And with that, he slammed the piano lid shut. Just then, a voice cut through the chaos. "Excuse me, officer. Is there a problem here?" A tall woman in sunglasses stepped from the crowd. People gasped as recognition rippled through them. It was Dr. Evelyn Parker, a world-famous conductor who had worked with the greatest musicians alive. Bradley blinked, caught off guard. This man is loitering." She held up her hand. "This man is no loiterer. This man is Kwame Mensah, one of the most brilliant pianists in the world. I've shared stages with him in Vienna, in Berlin, in New York. And you dare call his music trash?" The crowd erupted. Phones shot into the air. People shouted Kwame's name. Bradley stammered, his face pale. What? Him? No. No way." Kwame stepped forward, his voice deep and steady. "Yes. Way." He sat back at the piano, lifted the lid, and began to play. And this time, he didn't hold back. The plaza was consumed by a storm of sound. Fingers blurred across the keys, filling the air with thunder and lightning, sorrow and triumph. It was music so raw, so powerful, it brought people to tears. The crowd roared in applause. Some fell to their knees. Children clapped wildly. And in that moment, Bradley, the man who mocked him, who called him nobody, stood frozen, humiliated in front of the entire city. The mayor's office heard about it within hours. News channels replayed the footage nonstop. Headlines read, Cop Harasses world-renowned pianist on the street. Officer humiliates music legend, faces investigation. Bradley was suspended. The department scrambled to contain the fallout. But Kwame? He was offered a concert hall that very night. Invitations poured in. Old friends, lost connections, all reaching out. Yet Kwame didn't smile. When reporters asked if he felt vindicated, he said only this. Fame does not protect you from cruelty, but dignity that can never be stolen. As the cameras flashed, a shadowy figure stood at the back of the crowd, watching Kwame closely. He pulled out a phone and whispered into it. Yes, it's him. He's resurfaced. Tell the others the legend has returned. Never underestimate the quiet ones. The world may label someone a nobody, but greatness cannot be erased by cruelty, and dignity cannot be silenced by power. The world had just rediscovered Kwame, but fame doesn't erase scars. Applause doesn't erase enemies. And as the crowd celebrated his return, a shadow from his past had already begun moving against him. They thought the humiliation of one cop was the end of his struggle. But the truth? It was only the beginning. The video of Kwame's confrontation with Officer Bradley had gone viral. Millions watched the clip of the street musician transforming into a world-class pianist before their very eyes. Overnight, Kwame went from being the man on the corner to the man everyone wanted to see. Invitations flooded in, television shows, symphonies, interviews, endorsement deals. But Kwame refused most of them. Music is my sanctuary, he told a reporter. Not my stage. He still played on the streets each morning. Not for money, not for fame, but because the world had once taken everything from him, and the streets had been the only place left where he could still be free. The community loved him. Children gathered at his piano, humming his melodies. Elders brought him food. To them, Kwame was more than a pianist. He was proof that dignity could survive even in the face of cruelty. But not everyone was celebrating. Across the plaza, behind tinted windows of a sleek black car, a man sat in silence. His name was Victor Langston, a wealthy art dealer with connections in the highest places. He was also the man who had once betrayed Kwame years ago, stealing his fortune, sabotaging his contracts, and leaving him penniless. Victor had thought Kwame would never resurface, that the legend had been buried in poverty. But now, seeing him on every news broadcast, he clenched his jaw. He wasn't supposed to come back. Victor hissed into his phone. If he speaks, if the truth comes out about what we did. A voice on the other end interrupted. Then you'd better silence him before he silences you. Victor's eyes narrowed as he watched Kwame play for the children. This time, he won't escape. 2 weeks later, Kwame received a letter, embossed with gold. It bore the seal of the National Conservatory of Music. It was an invitation. Mr. Mensah, we humbly request your presence to perform at our annual gala, a night to celebrate the greatest musicians of our time. For most, it was the highest honor imaginable. But for Kwame, it was something else. The very same institution that had turned its back on him years earlier when Victor had orchestrated lies against him. Kwame hesitated, but the children who had gathered around him cheered. Do it, Kwame. Show them who you are. He smiled faintly. Perhaps this was fate giving him one last chance to reclaim his name. What Kwame didn't know was that the invitation was a trap. The night of the gala arrived. Cameras flashed as limousines pulled up to the glittering hall. Celebrities, politicians, and business moguls filled the seats. And in the center of it all stood Kwame, humble yet proud, his worn piano replaced by a gleaming grand Steinway. As he played, silence filled the hall. Every note carried both sorrow and triumph. The sound of a man who had walked through fire and survived. By the end, the entire audience was on its feet, applauding wildly. But then the applause shifted. From a balcony, Victor stood, clapping slowly. A cold smile stretched across his face. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said loudly, "I know you're impressed. But do you really know who this man is?" The crowd fell silent. "This man you applaud is not a genius. He is a fraud, a thief, a liar who once stole millions from the very institutions he now pretends to represent." Gasps echoed through the hall. Cameras turned from Kwame to Victor. Murmurs spread like wildfire. Kwame's face darkened. His hands trembled at the piano. Victor pulled out a folder and slammed it on the podium. "Here is the proof. His contracts, his debts, his crimes. You celebrate him tonight, but tomorrow you'll know the truth." Headlines the next morning screamed, "World-famous pianist exposed as fraud. Kwame Mensah's dark past revealed." Though none of Victor's accusations were true, the damage was done. Sponsors pulled back. Concerts were canceled. Strangers spit at Kwame on the street. Officer Bradley, now reinstated, mocked him openly on social media. "Guess I was right all along. Just another nobody pretending to be somebody." The community still loved him, but the weight of the lies crushed him. At night, Kwame sat at his piano, his fingers frozen. For the first time, he could not play. One evening, as he packed his things to leave the plaza, a young boy approached him. It was the same boy who had cheered for him weeks earlier. "Don't quit, Mr. Kwame," the boy said softly. "They can take your concerts. They can take their stages. But they can't take your music. Play for us. Play for the truth." Tears welled in Kwame's eyes, and for the first time in weeks, his fingers touched the keys again. A melody rose, fragile but unbroken. The crowd gathered, phones in hand, recording every note. Within hours, the video spread online. Kwame plays through the lies. Millions watched as the music spoke louder than the accusations. The world began to question Victor's claims. And Victor? He watched in fury as the tide turned back toward Kwame. One late night, Kwame returned home to find an envelope slipped under his door. Inside was a single page. It read, "They framed you once. They will try again. But the truth lies in the vault. Room 17. The Conservatory Archives. Find it before they destroy it." Kwame froze. His heart pounded. Whoever had written this knew the secrets Victor was hiding. And if Kwame could reach that vault, he might finally expose the conspiracy that had ruined his life. But as he turned the corner of his street, headlights flared. A black car screeched to a stop. Men in dark suits stepped out. Victor himself emerged, his smile cold as ice. "You should have stayed buried, Kwame," he whispered. "Now, you've left me no choice." The screen fades to black. To be continued. Truth can be buried, smeared, and twisted, but it cannot be destroyed. Those who stand firm in dignity will always find a way to rise again, no matter how powerful the enemies aligned against them. If you believe Kwame's story shows the fight for truth against corruption, stand with him. Like, comment, share, and subscribe to Wealth and Wounds, because the battle isn't over, and justice still has a voice.